Hello and welcome to the Openfire podcast, a series of podcasts focusing on the fire safety industry and tackling the current issues facing responsible persons in the commercial and residential sectors. We will be discussing the latest innovations from a variety of specialist fire safety manufacturers, looking at the lessons learnt from the terrible Grenfell tragedy from a year ago and taking the views of some of the fire industry's most prominent and recognised leaders. My name's Dave Calvert, an independent fire consultant. With me to discuss the latest fire news, I have fire expert, pundit, WizKid and Alpha Geek, Mr. Tom Gilbert. How are you, Tom?
I'm wonderful, David. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I feel we need to announce that we're in new studios this week.
We do. I think what's really important is that everyone needs to know this was the first take as well. Yeah. This isn't a second take in any way, shape or form. We're going straight into it.
It's very, very soon going to be about the fourth take.
Absolutely. So we are in a brand new surrounding.
State-of-the-art studio.
It's fantastic,
and for the first time with video recording.
We're videoing it.
We're going to stick it on YouTube.
We are, and iTunes.
People can generally be unkind about our physical appearance and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Hopefully they'll cut quite tight in on the faces. So they don't
Hopefully,
see
yeah. Anything from the neck down or from the chin up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we're also very shortly, we've had a lot of people asking where they can get hold of our podcast. Up till now, we've been a bit inundated in terms of the response from episodes 1 and 2. And we weren't quite prepared to be on iTunes and various other platforms. But very shortly, this will be out on iTunes for a regular download.
Absolutely. We listen to our listeners.
We listen to our listeners.
We got an email through. Someone said, Dave, how do I download this regularly and don't miss it?
We didn't think that through, really, did we?
Well, to be fair, we didn't think anyone was going to listen other than our parents.
No, but the feedback's been overwhelming.
It has.
And we're quite excited about all that, aren't we?
We've had, 3 listens now?
No, I think we've been...
We're in the hundreds, which is quite impressive.
Considering the content of the first 2 episodes, I think we've absolutely nailed it, and we're getting a lot of support from the industry. So what have we got lined up for this week's show, Tom?
So we've had lots of requests about this particular subject. It's very topical. So we're going to talk about fire doors this week. And we've got a special guest in, a guy called Danny White, who many out there will know of. And he's an independent fire door expert, and he will be talking to us a little bit later in the show about fire doors. Before we get there, though, there's a lot of people who tuned into episode 1 and episode 2 who are going to want to know a little bit about your homework, Dave.
My homework, yeah. Do you want to remind us?
Yeah, absolutely. So every week we set Dave some homework. It's ultimately a PhD level assignment.
It was a toughie this week.
It was a tough one. So this week, Dave's homework was to identify what cheese was the most fire retardant, and that stemmed from the question relating to Samuel Pepys in the Great Fire of London burying his Parmesan, and we wondered, why did he bury his Parmesan? Surely
did he need to bury his Parmesan? Yeah,
exactly. So we wondered if he had other cheeses, would he have needed to bury it? So that was kind of the question. You've gone away.
Okay, so extensive research. Firstly, I found that terrifyingly, most cheeses are very difficult to set fire to.
Are they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, all these years we've been talking about asbestos and things like that. We should have been possibly considering the use of cheese.
Really? Which is surprising because milk is very flammable.
You didn't set me
and yogurt
as a homework. You asked me about cheese.
That's true. It's
Don't be throwing other dairy products into the podcast at the last minute trying to throw me. So even a single layer of square yellow sandwich cheese, so like that Kraft cheese, it won't catch fire when a Bunsen burner is applied to it.
Did you get a Bunsen burner?
I got a Bunsen burner, put it to it, and you would assume it would either melt to some sort of liquid or catch fire or something. Doesn't do either of them. It just goes slightly black. And like a little bit, just looks a little bit disappointing.
So it's very fire retardant then, is what you're telling me?
Well, possibly. But, so, this got me thinking, why the hell not? Why did it not collapse into, liquid, and why did it not catch fire? If you do a little bit of research, I've got to say the briefest of research.
Okay.
There's a plethora of YouTube videos posted with outraged Americans raging over why their cheese won't burn.
Really?
Yep, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there with a piece of Kraft cheese, setting a light to it with a Bunsen burner or something like that, and saying this is disgusting. It must be because it's all full of E numbers, asbestos, halogens, and all these other things. Why? And we're eating this yellow substance. Are we mad? And all this kind of thing.
Sure.
Very angry people. So, are we putting some sort of awful chemical petri dish into our sandwiches? This is where the homework went. Well, in short, no. It's down to very simple chemistry. If you think about what cheese is, which is essentially congealed bovine mammary secretion, most often produced by adding enzymes derived from animal stomachs and various strains of bacteria.
Sure.
There's actually a magic component in there of processed cheese, which is emulsifying salt, either phosphate salts or sodium citrate, which is derived from citric acid. Totally natural in limes, lemons, all that kind of stuff. In a nutshell, emulsifying salts help to bind the fats, proteins and water in cheese, which allow it to melt into a smooth substance without separating into oil and seized milk proteins and thereby not burning.
That is possibly the most fascinating thing I've heard in the last 3 seconds.
The point of it is it helps to protect the cheese from bacteria that causes botulism and things like that.
Fantastic.
So all these angry people, angry at the fact their cheese won't burn, is actually due to the fact that it also won't give you botulism, which is quite a nice thing.
That's quite helpful.
So I did a little bit more research to actually answer the question. Cheese can actually catch fire, but it usually has to dehydrate first. So if you turn it into a dry powder, or at least carbonate, it will start to carbonise rather than burn.
Okay.
There's been some very well-documented cases. I found at least two major roads being closed due to fires of lorries full of cheese catching fire in 2013.
I just expected you to set fire to a bit of cheddar, Dave.
No, this is what you get. You get the maximum effort with the minimum results from me, Tom.
Well, you're not kidding. So where are these road crashes?
So in 2013, a road tunnel in Norway was closed by a lorry load of burning cheese, about 27 tonnes of caramelised brown goat cheese.
So it's firefighting goats again, Dave.
Yeah, back to the goats, Tom. Back to the goats.
They've been in every episode so far.
Well, I have a thing about goats.
Yeah, you have.
Caught light as it was being driven through the Bratty Tunnel in northern Norway. Then in April 2017, thousands of pounds of cheese went up in flames after a semi-truck in Wisconsin, very famous for cheese, caught fire on a highway. The truck was carrying 20,000 pounds of Kraft and Velveeta cheese when the driver realised the vehicle's brakes were on fire. And the fire chief described it almost like petrol if it gets hot enough.
Was this the petrol in the vehicle rather than the cheese?
It was like an accelerant.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So the answer, anyway, after all that, the answer to your homework question,
yes,
is actually who can be crowned the most fire-resistant cheese?
Yes.
The answer is sausage cheese.
Sausage cheese.
Sausage cheese.
This, I'm assuming, is not cheese shaped like a sausage, or indeed cheese that tastes of sausages.
This is cheese that's in sausages.
So butcher's stuff.
Indeed. So I give the credit to a food writer, Cassie Danewood, writing.
Thanks,
I found
Cassie.
this online on Our Everyday Life. Sausage makers often include cheese in their products to add taste and texture, as we know, because regular cheese melts too easily and adversely affects the sausage shape. High temperature cheddar, hot pepper and mozzarella cheese specifically made for sausages are sold in 1/4 inch cubes and resist melting under typical smokehouse temperatures of up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
That is amazing. Like the same temperature as
That's the
lead.
same as lead alloys. Yeah.
Wow.
So that I think is sausage cheese. Gets the crown.
That is good enough for me. So we need to find a sausage cheese manufacturer and give them their award.
Are you happy with my homework this week?
Do you know what? I'll give you a B for attainment, but an A for effort.
I bloody went for it this week, didn't I?
You did. You did well. To be fair, if there were videos of you setting fire to cheese, I'd be more impressed. I think a lot of the evidence you've done there has been YouTube-based.
I didn't want the London Fire Brigade criticising our lack of fire safety with me setting fire to cheese in my garage.
It would be a bit embarrassing as a fire consultant if you burnt your house down.
It would be an awkward one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Wonderful. We'll come up with some other homework for you. In fact, I deserve homework this week, Dave.
I'll have a think.
All right, you keep it going as we go, because we need to talk about the important bit of the show, really, don't we?
We do need to move on to serious subjects.
and you probably got the question.
I have a question.
Go on then.
About fire doors to kick us off, Tom.
Go on then.
My question to you. What the actual fuck is going on with fire doors at the moment?
I mean, that is a wonderful question.
That is quite a broad question, yeah.
It is broad, but topical.
Yeah, indeed.
So obviously our next guest will give us a little bit of an insight, but in answer to your question about the whole what the fuck is going on with fire doors thing, I always promised I wouldn't swear, but you set the precedent. So obviously we've had the Grenfell Tower disaster 18, 19 months ago now. After that fire, the Metropolitan Police did some testing of fire doors in Grenfell Tower, and they identified that the Manx master door, which was fitted, failed at 15 minutes and not the 30 minutes that it should have failed at, which obviously has created a huge amount of drama in the fire safety industry. Lots of people coming out the woodwork saying, we've known about this for yonks and yonks. Unfortunately, one of the guys in the room with us is one of those people. And although some people in the industry also think it's a bit of a red herring, though controversial, we'll talk about that later on. The Community Secretary, James Brockingshire, said that the risk to housing remains low. So we kind of worry, why is everyone panicking then if it's low risk? But, you know, as a critical building feature, is low the right thing? I don't know. We then had further tests where another 5 organisations, other than Manx, were identified as having doors that failed, and that was Specialist Building Products Limited, who were trading as Permador, Solar Windows Limited, and Bertley Group trading as Bowater by Bertley. And a lot of the problem, aside from installation, and our next guest will correct me, I'm sure, is about the fact that they haven't been testing both sides of the door, which is particularly a problem in composites. So that leads quite nicely in, I think, to our guest. So our guest this week is I've got Mr. Daniel White here, but we all know him, of course, as Danny White, who's the managing director of a company called Fire Door Compliance Consultants Limited. Danny spent 20 years working for a leading fire door manufacturer. Of course, we can't say who they were. It was Gerda. Then set up his own company due to what he perceived to be gaps in the market. Danny is
how big were those gaps in the market?
They were probably bigger than 3 mil, would be my guess. Danny's covered under UCAS accredited schemes, BM Trada for installation and third-party certification for maintenance as well. Danny doesn't carry out any physical works, which enables him to be independent, and so clients use him to check installations and ensure they're correct. He can also carry out maintenance surveys and drop schedules, but again, doesn't carry any corrective work, so he can never be accused of being anything other than entirely impartial, which works for us, doesn't it, Dave?
I think that's, yeah, absolutely.
Little known fact is his favourite song is Come On Baby Light My Fire by The Doors. So here you are, Danny White, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you for coming to our wonderful studio.
Hello, Danny.
Hello, Dave. And you told me it was going to be a karaoke session, so I'm slightly perturbed about that, but let's continue.
We're going to ask you some questions. We've got some questions that we've put together. We've also got some questions from our listeners who went out onto LinkedIn and asked some questions.
We actually had an amazing response on as soon as we mentioned we were doing fire doors. We had quite a lot of emails come through.
Yeah, can you ask your expert this?
We're going to try and go through a few of them whilst we've got Danny here.
Absolutely. And I think the big question that everyone has got, I think, is about certification. Yes. And the different sorts of certification, and people are banding around certain words around certification like global assessment and certifier and primary test evidence. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of clients really get it yet. And I thought maybe you could kind of give us a bit of a brief outline as to what is the difference between primary test evidence and all the others.
Right. Thank you. Well, I'll try and make it as simplistic as possible, just to keep you guys happy.
Thanks, because we are simple people, Dave, aren't we?
In effect, you've got the primary test evidence, and that means a door manufacturer has taken the time and spent the money to actually have his door burnt, which is quite an unusual concept in the fire door industry.
Yes.
So you are certain that what they're producing has been
you're saying it's been in a furnace, and
it's performed to 30 or 60 minutes.
Okay.
So that is what I would highly recommend, and I'd also look at people going down the third-party certification route to ensure that what they've had burnt is what they've had tested.
Sure.
So is that the top standard, Danny, as far as you're concerned? That's ultimately the best choice?
That's the best choice, and if I had my way, it would be the only standard.
Okay. So that means I've gone out and I've started a door company, taken my door to a testing laboratory like, I don't know, BRE or Warrington, and gave them my door, installed it into a furnace, set fire to it, and they say, yeah, it passed the test, here's a certificate, and then I can go and build 100 million doors, flog them all with my certification and say, that's the door and it's been tested. That's primary test evidence.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and that's what we think is the best.
That is the best because it's proof.
Okay, fantastic. So what are my other options then?
Well, the other options are, and I'm going to be asking a few questions.
Sure.
I'll start with you, Tom.
Good.
Have you ever been involved in manufacturing?
In a DIY sort of a way, yes.
Yeah, that's good. And Dave?
Hang on. What sort of DIY sort of a way?
I've sorted some stuff up.
You sorted some stuff up?
Yeah. I put some concrete down.
I think that's doesn't make you a competent person with DIY.
Does it not?
No.
Well, I could still start a company. I think that's where we're going.
Shall we?
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Dave, have you got a shed?
Yeah, I have got a shed, Danny.
So now we have competency on the tools, and we have a manufacturing facility.
We do.
Happy days.
Excellent.
So in a couple of hours, we're going to start producing millions of doors for the marketplace.
Could we start with 100,000? Because I'm a bit tired. It's late.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay.
Overtime?
All right, fine.
Okay, good. So what we then do is we go back to the door blank manufacturer who's had his tests. He's had his doors tested.
Okay.
And we say...
In a furnace?
In a furnace.
Okay.
Can we have your data, please? And he says, yeah, all right, as long as you promise to do what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
And then we'll go to a test house and say, we got this, and we promise to manufacture in accordance with that. Can you write us a global assessment? He'll say, yep, thank you very much. Pay our checks, and we're ready to go.
Really?
So that's one type. The other type is where you have certain schemes where it's a bit more piecemeal.
Okay.
So you can buy your door blank from A, your frame from B, your intumescent seals from C, and all your ironmongery from D. They've probably all been tested in their own right, but not as a complete unit.
Okay.
But don't worry about that because we can manufacture it and put it under a certification scheme.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So basically, on those terms, we can basically sell certificated door sets, having not set fire to anything.
Yes.
In situation one. So I go to someone that says, have you tested a 44 mil wood blank? And they say, yes, here's my test evidence, and I can just go and create a 44 mil wood blank.
Yeah. And I think this is very pertinent at the moment based on...
I don't have to use their doors.
No.
Just build it to the same specification that they got tested.
So what are we talking in terms of what building regs or laws must be adhered to? Because it sounds like there's a massive gap between what seems good practice and what some people will do compared to what you could actually get away with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the second category there, how are they, or are they still adhering to the existing building regs or the appropriate laws?
Because there's no proper regulation of the fire door industry, which has been a concern for a long time. I think if you look at the likes of electrics, gas, asbestos, it's heavily regulated.
Yeah, of course.
But with fire doors, just go and do it.
And to be fair, that extends into the majority of fire safety related work anyway, doesn't it? You don't have to be accredited to do fire stopping work. You don't have to be accredited to be a fire risk assessor, and on and on. Obviously, there's manufacturing requirements around fire alarms and things like that, and fire extinguishers and things like that. But as you say, there's no proper policing, is there?
No. But yet we have a national fire service. We don't have a national asbestos service or things like that. So there is something, I think, fundamentally wrong with the regulation of the fire door industry, which need to be looked at. Because when we start manufacturing this afternoon, as long as we do everything that document says, we comply with the building regulations for fire. Now, there are other regulations we have to look at, but a lot of people are turning a blind eye to that. So things like thermal, acoustics, security, which on new build has got the same weight as fire. But let's not worry about that because we can fudge the issue around that. And because the specifiers don't understand, the clients don't know, and in certain instances, building control don't know, we can easily brush that under the carpet and we can get our fire doors.
So when you consider all the aspects that doors have to pass on top of just the fire bit, are there any organisations that have actually met everything in a primary test evidence situation?
There are a few.
Literally a few?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could probably name 6 or 7.
Okay. Out of how many manufacturers?
Thousands.
I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it?
I'm astonished.
I mean, you look astonished. You look astonished. But that is ridiculous, isn't it? When you think there are thousands of companies that you can go and buy fire doors from, and there are only 6 or 7 that a BM Trada certificated person would say.
What should people do, Tom, if they want to know who those 6 or 7 are?
Well, I mean, obviously they can email us at Tom and Dave at the openfirepodcast.com. In fact, it's probably Dave and Tom. It's not Tom and Dave, is it?
It's Dave and Tom.
Of course it is. You always go first.
Tom
I always go first.
At openfire.com, exactly. It's one of your specialties. So, yeah, you could always come to us and we'll talk about it. But the reality is that you can go and talk to any manufacturer and say, listen, talk to me about your test evidence.
Yeah.
It's not onerous to ask for that, is it?
No, and some people will not want you to have it because, understandably, it's their crown jewels and they've actually gone down the route of having it properly tested. If people are saying that, I turn around and say, OK, come down, we'll sit in a room and we'll go through your test reports.
Yeah.
And if they won't do that, I would have to question why not.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, we had it with one, I was working for one local authority, and the door manufacturer wanted the client to go to them as opposed to them coming to the client.
Oh, really?
And the client just said, well, if you can't be bothered, see you later.
Well, standard.
And closed the door.
Danny, we have, I said we had quite a few questions coming. We're going to try and cover a few of them. This one was from Neil Ashdown, who emailed us, Neil Ashdown from Fire Doors Complete Limited.
Is he related to Paddy Ashdown?
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's his dad.
Oh, is he? Is his dad? Sorry, Neil.
So it's a bit of a long question. As certificated fire door inspectors, we often refer to third-party certification data sheets, and helpfully the certifier ones are available freely online. Yes, Tom?
I think people think this question is too long. Can you do it?
It is quite a long question.
Can you do it in a voice?
In a voice.
Do it in a voice.
Okay, what voice would you like me to read it in?
I was thinking...
would you like me to read it in Neil Ashdown's voice?
Paddy Ashdown's voice, please. See if you can do that.
I don't know.
Can you do it in Brian Blessed? Caution's a lie.
However, the information regarding installation and use of essential hardware stated on the data sheets often varies to that used by the third-party certificated door set manufacturer.
I like it. I'm intrigued now. I'm listening.
For example, hinge positions, the certified data sheets. I can't read this.
Okay.
This question is going on. Let me just finish off with the. Actual point of the question. Do Exova BM Trada, which I think you're a part of, Danny, accredited by. Recognise the door core manufacturer's technical manual as equivalent to the certifier data sheet. And will Exova BM Trada be addressing this issue?
Let me turn it into a simple question then.
I think that would help, Tom.
Okay, so my interpretation of that question is ultimately certifier have got a door, and as a fire door inspector, you're looking at that door, and on the certifier installation instructions, it says put a hinge in the middle of the door. But yet the installer has put the hinge 200mm from the top of the door, which is what the question says, right?
That's exactly what I said.
So obviously what he's then saying is if you go to the manufacturer's data, the manufacturer says it's been tested with a hinge 200mm from the top, but the certified document says install it in the middle of the door. So I think what Neil's saying there is whose is right, who has precedent. Now my assumption is if you want certification, you've got to do it the certifier way. If you want the other certification, you've got to do it the other way. So what's the right answer?
You're sort of correct in what you said there, because if you're looking at the certified document, what the certified document says is basically if you don't do it how we tell you to do it, the certified document is invalid.
Okay.
So that's that. If the installer's then using the door blank manufacturer's data, he could be putting things in which are in contravention to the door blank manufacturer's test data.
Okay.
So from that point of view, you could be both wrong. And that's why it makes more sense and peace of mind to go for primary tested doors, because then you know.
Brilliant. So in terms of the problems where you've got organisations that have got door blank certify schemes, all this sort of stuff in existence, and people are looking at them and saying, that's a problem, that's not a problem. What we're basically saying is, I don't know what we're saying. I've lost complete track of what we're saying about fire doors now.
No, I think Danny's hit the nail on the head.
Great. So just use supply certificated doors and be done with it, really.
Yeah.
And if you've got old ones, then the next question we're going to have, which comes from Matt Wood, actually, which is quite pertinent. Matt asks, he's a very nice guy, Matt. The question is about upgrading or replacement. And he basically says, with so much emphasis on data trails these days, which he believes is okay, is it better to replace it rather than adequately repair it? And then he starts talking about the consideration of time going through procurement. But I think we can sort of eradicate the procurement aspect, because you can just go to a framework, can't you? Just get third-party certificated doors of any manufacturer. But I think there's a good question there. Repair or replace, pros and cons.
I think it's a pertinent question, because I think there's a misunderstanding of what upgrading a fire door means.
Okay.
For example, many years ago, I got called to a block of flats because there was an urgent problem, and basically the door was lying in the hallway, and we thought, oh, that doesn't seem very good. But it was a traditional door from possibly the 1960s, 70s, old London City Council type door. And we started asking the question, what happened to this door to make it fall through sort of so easily? And we were informed that there were a couple outside who were getting rather amorous with each other. Very
fruity.
And it got a bit too fruity, and they fell through.
I don't like the way you say fruity, Tom.
Liar.
So having fallen through the door, it caused a bit of an issue, especially when they could have just banged on the door. But then they were, so I don't know where we go with that.
It does bring a new meaning to banging on the door. Yeah, of course it does, yeah.
But what it means is, what was that door, what was it? What was it made up of? What were the glues like? How was it jointed together?
Yeah.
And I think the issue being, people talk about, well, if you put an intumescent seal in and you upgrade the hinges and you do X, Y and Z to it, well, what are you actually achieving?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're spending money on doing something, but you don't really know what your starting point was.
And it's not a lot cheaper, is it, really?
No. I've seen some cost analysis where you're looking at possibly between 50 and 100 quid difference between an upgrade, which gets you nothing, as opposed to a fully tested and certified door set.
Fantastic.
So, the other area where you can potentially do repairs to a door is under a maintenance regime from a third-party certification scheme, but that means you have to have data on the door. And it could be things like the intumescent seals are broken, we need to replace them.
Okay.
We're not talking about we've got a solid door, we're going to cut into the door, because by cutting into the door you can fundamentally weaken that structure.
Because it might have been tested, and if it has, it probably didn't have a hole in the door.
Nah.
Yeah. Have you got any more questions, Dave?
I've got another question from, this time it's from Andy Cunningham. Andy contacted us on LinkedIn for a change. So Andy's posted a question for us. Anyone following us on LinkedIn will have seen it. Danny, have they considered how to manage or track the removal of internal door closers in social housing? Just one removal essentially reduces the fire safety integrity of that building, allowing corridors to smoke log.
What's the purpose of blocks of flats guidance say about door closers, Dave? What does it say? In lieu of all replacement. Look at his face. I know what you mean now.
I can tell you.
I know what you mean now.
Well, I think as we feel that it's very much almost the single most important part of a fire door. If you can't upgrade anything else, then stick a self-closer on it, and it's better than nothing because it keeps the door closed. And even if that door only lasts for 4 minutes,
that's 4 minutes
longer than if it's left open.
A 60-minute door left open has less fire resistance than a 4-minute door that's closed, doesn't it?
Indeed. So we like self-closers, is what we're saying.
We do. No, there aren't any other ways of closing a door. It has to be a self-closer. I was going to say more self-closers are available, but we didn't mention a manufacturer, so it's fine.
So is this a problem you've come up against, Danny?
It's a massive problem. And I think it happens for a variety of reasons. That firstly, that the door manufacturer or the installers don't fully understand the purpose of the door closer and how to get the tolerance gaps right. Because you have to bear in mind that we have to adhere to the Equalities Act of 2010 to make sure that people can open and close properly, and there's BS 8300, and you need to open and close it with something like a 30 Newton force. If they get too tight, people get annoyed with them and they just take them off because they're struggling to open and close them, which also can become a health and safety policy issue because you can't actually open the door when you need to get out. But also that some of the ones that sit on the back of the doors, the older types, people don't like them because they look ugly and they just take them off. And I don't think that there's enough education out there why they're on there. The fundamentals of it is if there's a fire in your flat, you get out and you don't have to worry about they are seen as
a nuisance more than anything. I think it's worth of note. Andy Cunningham posted the question of Light for Life. He has actually, he's working on a device, an invention. We like innovators on this programme.
Man with a shed.
He's asked us not to release details of it, but he's working on something at the moment. I think Andy Cunningham from Light for Life, we need to get him on the show, Tom.
Okay.
And we can ask him about it.
Okay. Let's get him.
What do you think his device is going to do? Do you think it's possibly the old bucket of water on top of the door? Think he'll electrocute anyone trying to take the self-closure off?
I think we've got to apply in a little bit of logic to it, bearing in mind that you can buy a car now that will park itself and that we're flying stuff to the moon still. You know, why can't we come up with some electronic device that might tell...
Stop people pissing around with self-closers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, BIM or, you know, building management systems, that sort of thing. BMS.
I think we'll put an invite out to Andy and get him.
Yeah, let's get him in. He'll come in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, he hasn't got anything on in his shed.
And he can tell us all about Light for Life, can't he?
He can, absolutely. I suppose the last question before we go towards the end of the show would be, we talked about the door manufacturers, we've talked about certification, we've talked about whether you should upgrade or replace. But we haven't really talked about installation and the competency of people installing. And I got a good question from a client actually the other day, which you and me had a little bit of a chat about. And this was about kitchen doors, you know, which need to be fire rated inside flats. And the question was, do we need to use third-party certificated door sets? And do we need to use a third-party certificated installer, so like a FireAS certificated installer? And you then start thinking, well, actually, you're getting different degrees of assurance with the actual installation of the door as well. So it doesn't just stop at, is my door certificated? You also got to think about the person putting the door in the hole. What's your experience with that? I mean, is FireAS or another third-party certification installation scheme a panacea? Is that the way you've got to go?
It's a better way of going. And the reason I say that, if we go back to our global assessments, that the installation has to adhere to the global assessment, and if it doesn't, it negates anything.
Yeah.
And I've seen sort of thousands of doors where I've been asked to go along and inspect, and the first thing I say is, can I take off the architrave, please?
Yeah.
And I had a eureka moment. What do you think architrave is there for?
Is it just to hide bad installation?
Absolutely.
Yes. Do I get a prize?
And the amount of times you see all this pinky foam stuff in there and it's not sealed properly.
How often does it hide good installation as a percentage?
I'd say 0.5%.
Wow. So we reckon 99.5% of all doors is bad. Pretty much.
Yeah. I might be conservative and say 98%.
Okay, fantastic.
Because there could be some going in there very quickly.
That is pretty impressive, though, when you think about it.
Yeah, and it's sometimes you open up you take off the architrave and you can see into the front room and you're thinking, that's not great.
Absolutely.
And so with the third-party certification schemes, they've been on a level of training, and so they understand the importance of it. But again, like the third-party certification schemes for manufacturer, they get audited. And if they're not doing it properly, they lose their license. But again, it's peace of mind that instead of getting there's a contract going on, the painter and decorator hasn't got much work on at the moment, let's get them fitting fire doors, you're getting proper people to do it. Because if you're going to the expense of installing a proper fire door, get it done properly.
Well, we're talking about £1,000 piece of art, aren't we? That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And yet we're going to try and install it for as cheap as we possibly can, which just seems a little bit counterproductive.
And if you're sticking in a fire alarm system or a sprinkler system, who would you let install that?
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't get your local painter to do it, would you?
No.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I think that, when you're looking at global assessments, it is the installation which is critical to ensuring that bit of paper is any good or not. And what I've seen is everything that I've been looked at, it's failed.
Okay. So ultimately the advice, if you're not going to use third-party certificated people, make sure whoever's doing it is a competent chippy, maybe. That's a good start. And importantly, they read the installation instructions.
Yes.
That's the critical bit in it, reading the instructions, because They're not all the same, are they?
It's not just reading the installation instructions, it's actually carrying out what the installation instruction says.
Yes, indeed.
Because when you go on site and it says the fixing centres have to be at 600, to me that means the fixing centres have to be at 600. And when you're arguing on site, well, why have you put it at 620? Well, it's 20 mil outside. Well, doesn't really matter because the document says 600.
Yeah, absolutely.
So therefore, do it at 600.
Do you want to be the guy arguing your case?
And with all due
Just do
respect, how much is an additional fixing cost? About 5p?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? But this is the problem. This is what we live in, isn't it?
It is, yes. And things are sort of done on the cheap now. Hopefully the dynamics are changing a bit.
Yeah.
And there has to be a realistic price to install a fire door as opposed to trying to chuck in as many as quickly as possible to earn your money. I've come across companies who have to install 6 fire doors a day to earn any money, where you should be looking at 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it takes time.
Right, time has beaten us this week. Danny,
that was really interesting. I feel better about that.
I'm really pleased Danny come in, and I genuinely think perhaps this is a subject we need to pick up again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I want to get a manufacturer in.
It'd be interesting to get some of the manufacturers in.
Aren't we going to come in as manufacturers?
We could be a manufacturer. Maybe we could argue.
We might as well. Everyone else is. So
Tom, Dave, and Danny Doors Limited. All of our clients are looking to replace their doors at the moment, aren't they?
Yep.
Because they've been installed badly historically. So we'll put a call to arms really, and say, manufacturers, if you're listening, drop us a line.
If you want to come on,
come and talk to us.
Yeah, I think it is the subject at the moment.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, Danny, you might want to come back. Mate.
Yeah, we might bring you back, Danny, and then you can put a few questions to them for us.
As long as you get me some cheese.
Okay, we will.
And a parking space for my ox.
Exactly. Nice.
You've been listening, Danny, haven't you?
It's important. It's really important. So, well, thanks very much, Danny. Dave, are you going to, have you given me some homework? You giving me homework this week?
Right, okay. So I've been thinking, after my homework last week, I'm going to give you a little bit of homework yourself.
Okay.
I've put together a cliffhanger question for you while you've been talking to Danny.
Thank you.
So this is based on what we were talking about earlier, about the melting the cheese.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you a question and see how you deal with it. Danny, you can answer as well.
Oh, you want us to answer it now?
Okay, so this is based on, yes, you can answer it now, yeah.
Okay.
So this is based on, it's called it Melting Games Inquiry Showcase. You have, I want to know what order these substances will melt quickest, okay? So I'm going to give you the following 6 substances, and I want you to tell me which one has the lowest melting point. In other words,
this is going to be a QI thing, isn't it? We're going to answer it and it's going to go wrong.
No, we're just testing your fire safety knowledge, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, so the 7 objects just recounted are, I want you to put in order of which will melt the quickest, in other words, liquefy. Compared to which ones will just sit there and hold their shape until it reaches a higher temperature, yeah?
Okay.
Cheese.
What type? Joking. Next.
Butter.
Which brand? Joking.
Chocolate.
Dark milk or white? Joking. It's fine.
I need to say that this was based on some very dubious experiment by some students, okay?
So I'm giving you parameters here.
I'm holding no real kind of authority here. So cheese, butter, chocolate.
Yeah.
A bar of soap.
Which brand? Liquid hand soap?
A chapstick.
Which brand?
A gummy bear.
Which brand?
What colour?
I'm not telling you the brands. I'm not telling you there's no, or a crayon.
A crayon.
Okay, so which order
fire retardant crayons or normal ones?
Do you think will last the longest?
Okay.
I know the one that will last the least has got to be chocolate, because every time my kid gets a chocolate bar, it's everywhere, all over the place very quickly.
So you think chocolate will melt quickest, Danny? Tom, what do you think will melt first? At the lowest temperature?
Logically, I would say butter, because out of all of those things, it is the softest at room temperature.
Okay.
That would be my guess first, butter.
So butter would melt first. What's your order?
Is the butter coming out the fridge?
Is it cold butter? It's not speedy. So I would say, logically, butter is the softest at room temperature, so butter, then chocolate, because that, warm up the room a little bit more, it's going to start to melt. 3, chapstick, I guess, because, in your pocket, it's going to start going soft. I'd then go crayon, because you can melt them with a hairdryer. I was then going to say cheese. I think that's going to be wrong, but alas, we'll go with cheese, then a bar of soap, and then I would say gummy bear at the end. and applying logic to all of those things, that's the order I would go in. But I get the feeling they're all in the wrong order.
Based on the Melting Games Inquiry Showcase experiment, you didn't get one of those in the right position.
That is impressive.
Do you want to know the order?
I would.
You'll have to bloody tune in next week, Tom, and I will tell you what order.
Fantastic.
They come in.
The only reason we didn't get them in the right order because we don't have a board to play about with them.
Exactly, and we could talk about it.
Yes.
In closing, then, Dave, who's on next week's show?
Okay, so next week we're focusing on the younger generation of fire consultants. We've got two up and coming brilliant stars of the industry, Lucy Witts and Pencho Studenkov, and we're going to be asking them what it's like to join in our industry currently, what their challenges they're facing, where they're going, and where they've come from.
So we've got two youths, someone from Europe and a girl.
Indeed, we've got right on mixed bag next week. See if we can upset them.
No, that'll be really good. That's cool. What's the email address, Dave?
Okay, if anybody wants to write to us, any comments on what Danny has said today, if you agree, disagree, or if you would like to come on the show, if you have any questions for Pencho and Lucy next week, any comments regarding your experiences in the fire safety industry, please email us at Dave and Tom, all one word, Dave and Tom at openfirepodcast.com, and we'll pick up your email and we will respond.
Yeah, we do, and have.
We have indeed.
Proof.
And you can follow us on the www.openfirepodcast.com. And we're gradually spreading out onto Twitter and other mediums as we go. And hopefully by the time this goes out, we might be on...
BBC News?
BBC News did actually copy our news item on goats.
They did.
I've got to say.
They did.
We did that first. It looks like we copied them, but
we didn't.
We
they
bloody had
us.
that first, Tom.
Bloody people in BBC. Okay, so if you want to be a sponsor or you want to link to our website, again, go through the website or email us Dave and Tom at openfirepodcast.com. And thanks very much, Danny, for coming in. And
if you want to get hold of Danny, then get in touch with us. We'll give you his details and put you straight in touch with him.
Absolutely.
Great guy to know.
Cool. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, guys.
See you later.